The next variant of the Greater Pentagram ritual that we will explore is Liber Samic, more commonly referred to as the Boneless One ritual. This ritual is a poor translation of an extremely old and mysterious ritual called the Akephalos, more properly translated as Headless One. In the Thelema Dawn fusion tradition, this rite is used as an invocation of blind force, as a preliminary ritual to bring more magic power to the entire ceremony. The power could be considered flavorless, as the Headless One is seen as holistic. However, consider for a moment the statues and glyphs of the various gods of Egypt, having mostly similar bodies, but many various heads. Not only animal heads, but also entire animals for heads, and occasionally inanimate objects for heads. Now consider the Austin Spare style of sigil magic, wherein instead of using a sigil for a vague flavor of power such as Venus, which technically governs more than just the concept of love, one writes a very specific desired outcome, putting it through a process of abstraction to create a sigil for that very specific purpose. This brings us to the proposition of the Akephalos as a ritual tool. On the altar, as we have discussed, are the two candles representing the pillars of the Temple of Solomon. Often, an image of a deity is placed between these two candles, behind the thurible or incense brazier. The concept is to create a headless statue having some form of attachment point at the neck to be used for swapping out various heads depending on the nature of the ritual it is being used in at any given time. This creates a unique god for the specific purpose of each spell's desired outcome. Depending on the shape of your altar space and/or sensibilities, you may want to consider what type of body you may use for this project, and for inspiration here, we return to the art of ancient Egypt. Human bodies, male, female, or hermaphroditic, mummies, standing or seated. Also, bird bodies are common, as well as quadruped bodies such as lions, jackals, or cows. For this project, create or obtain a statuette of one of the previously mentioned types of bodies. In the case of human bodies, small statues of actual deities could be used for this process. There's also an argument for using articulated figures, as this could be used to add an additional layer of symbolism by posing them in various attitudes, such as the various grade signs. Remove the head of the statue, creating some kind of attachment point at the neck. This attachment point could facilitate the attachment of different heads, or be as simple as a small alligator clip to hold a hand-drawn head, sigil, or tarot card. When the Akephalos has been completed, place it on the altar without a head attached. Cleanse and banish the ritual space, and then purify and consecrate the Akephalos with holy water, salt, and incense, as was done with the other ritual tools. Following this, charge and initiate the Akephalos statue by performing the Headless One ritual, addressing the Akephalos as the deity. When this is complete, bow out of the ritual by walking backwards to the edge of the circle or ritual space, bowing once more toward the Akephalos, and then departing, skipping the normal step of a hard or soft banishment.
Yet another image of a separate UFO sighting. It's being called the Chandelier UFO because of its shape.
With that slight tangent out of the way, we now proceed to Liber Samekh, the Bornless One ritual. Crowley considered the Bornless One ritual to be of high importance as a general invocation of raw power, and he would at various times in his life use different versions of this ritual, tweaking parts here or there to his liking. We will be performing one of these variants. As usual, we begin by cleansing for the ritual facing east and performing the normal battery of preparatory spells: Kabbalistic Cross, Lesser Ritual Pentagram, and perhaps a Lesser Ritual Hexagram. We then begin the Liber Samekh ritual saying, "Thee I invoke, the Bornless One, Thou that didst create the earth and the heavens, Thou that didst create the night and the day, Thou that didst create the darkness and the light. Thou art Osiranothris, whom no man hath seen at any time. Thou art Yabas, thou art Yapos. Thou hast distinguished between the just and the unjust. Thou didst make the female and the male. Thou didst produce the seed and the fruit. Thou didst form men to love one another and to hate one another. I am Moshe, thy prophet, unto whom thou didst commit thy mysteries, the ceremonies of Chem. Thou didst produce the moist and the dry, and that which nourisheth all created life. Hear thou me, for I am the angel of Paphro Osiranothris. This is thy true name, handed down to the prophets of Chem." We then draw the invoking pentagram of air and give the sign of Shu, saying, "Hear me, Thiao, Riebet, Athleberseth, Blata, Ebeyu, Phi, Kitaso, Ib, Tiao. Hear me, and make all spirits subject unto me, so that every spirit of the firmament and of the ether, upon the earth and under the earth, on dry land and in the water, of whirling air and rushing fire, and every spell and scourge of God may be obedient unto me." We then turn to the south, giving the invoking pentagram of fire and the sign of Thum-Eith-Neith, saying, "I invoke thee, the terrible and invisible God who dwellest in the void place of the Spirit. Aro Gogoro Brao, Sothao, Modurio Flarkao, O Ape, Bornless One, hear me, and make all spirits subject unto me, so that every spirit of the firmament and of the ether, upon the earth and under the earth, upon dry land or in the water, of whirling air or rushing fire, and every spell and scourge of God may be obedient unto me." And then, turning to the west, to give the invoking pentagram of water and the sign of Oromouth, saying, "Hear me, Rubrial, Mariodam, Balbanaboth, Asolonai, Athmial, Tholeth, Abrasax, Aio, Iskure, mighty and bornless one, hear me and make all spirits subject unto me, so that every spirit of the firmament and of the ether, upon the earth and under the earth, on dry land or in the water, of whirling air or rushing fire, and every spell and scourge of God may be obedient unto me." Coming finally to the north, to make the invoking earth pentagram and the sign of Set with the words, I invoke thee, Ma Brael, Uel, Kotha, Athrebalu, Abraoth. Hear me, and make all spirits subject unto me, so that every spirit of the firmament and of the ether, on the earth and under the earth, on dry land and in the water, whirling air or rushing fire, and every spell and scourge of God shall be obedient unto me. We then complete the circle, coming back to the east. At this point, look upwards, make an invoking spirit active pentagram, and give the sign of rending the veil, saying, Hear me, Eoth, Abaoth, Basum, Isak, Sabaoth, Eo. This is the Lord of the gods, this is the Lord of the universe, this is he whom the winds fear. This is he who, having made voice by his commandment, is Lord of all things, King, ruler, and helper. Hear me, and make all spirits subject unto me, so that every spirit of the firmament and of the ether, upon the earth and under the earth, on dry land and in the water, of whirling air and rushing fire, and every spell and scourge of God shall be obedient unto me. Finally, look down and give an invoking spirit passive pentagram and the sign of closing the veil, and say, Hear me, Eo Pu, Eo Pu, Yaot, Yaeo, Eo, Abrasax, Sabriam, Oo, Uu, Adonai, Ede, Edu, Angelos, Tom Theon, Anlalalai, Gaia, Haba, Diakana, Korun. I am he, the bornless spirit, having sight in the feet, strong in the immortal fire. I am he, the truth. I am he who hated that evil should be brought into the world. I am he that lighteneth and thundereth. I am he from whom is the shower of life on earth. I am he whose mouth ever flameth. I am he, the begetter and manifester unto light. I am he, the grace of the world. The heart girt with a serpent is my name. Come thou forth and follow me, and make all spirits subject unto me, so that every spirit of the firmament, under the ether, on the earth and under the earth, upon dry land, or in the water, of whirling air or rushing fire, and every spell and scourge of God shall be obedient unto me. Yo, Sabo. Such are the words. As usual, before we proceed to the next pentagram ritual variation, we have various new material to discuss. Crowley, being unsatisfied by using a ritual written by anyone but himself, naturally had to give the Kabbalistic cross a complete overhaul, replacing not only the words but the cross as well, giving it a kind of fusion of an Ankh and papal cross. And of course, this is our topic of discussion for this chapter, a variation on the Kabbalistic cross known as the Oath of the Enchantment or the 11 Folds Seal. We begin with the animate version towards the Aeon. being bathed, dressed and armed, turn to face towards Boleskine House and strike the battery 13331. Then put the thumb of the right hand between its index and medius to make the figure hand gesture for use with the signs hereafter. The vertical component of the enchantment. Draw a circle about the head crying Nuit. Draw the thumb vertically downward and touch the Muladhara chakra, that is to say, the dick, and shout Hadith. Then, retracing the line, touch the center of the breast and scream Rahu Kuit, the horizontal component of the enchantment. Touch the forehead, mouth, and larynx, howling Aiwaz. Draw from the right to left across the face at the level of the nostrils. Touch the center of the chest and solar plexus, roaring Therion. Draw from left to right across the chest at the level of the sternum. Touch the belly button chakra and dick chakra, yelling Babylon. Draw from right to left across the abdomen at the level of the hips. The accessivation of the spells. Then clasp hands upon the wand, fingers and thumbs interlaced, screeching Lashtal, Thelema, Yahweh, Agape, Amen, the proclamation of the accomplishment. To finish, let the magician strike the battery 353, crying Abra Hadabra. Before moving on to the enactment of Liber Vivel Reguli, we must pause once more to discuss the matter of the averse pentagrams. If one reads the instructions for Liber Reguli, they will surely notice the implementation of upside-down or inverted pentagrams, which have not been introduced until now. However, these pentagrams are not inverted, but rather averted, as Crowley describes, and this has led to some discourse over how these pentagrams are to be drawn. Upon analysis of the footnotes, it is found that the word averse means turned away, as opposed to inverse, which means vertically mirrored. This is reinforced by the strange positions of the elemental attributions to the compass directions. At first glance, it seems like an ordinary pentagram ritual with the normal compass directions of fire in the south and water in the west, except that it appears the directions for earth and air have been flipped. This would normally not make sense for a pentagram ritual, which are generally used to invoke terrestrial energies and therefore use terrestrial attributions for the compass directions, unlike the hexagrams, which are considered celestial and therefore use the zodiacal directions of the elements. However, this is not a terrestrial pentagram ritual, but rather a celestial one, as will be seen that by rotating the circle of the lesser hexagram upon this axis, The directional attributions now line up as described in the ritual. This further justifies the use of these specialty pentagrams, as it is now possible to understand that it is not the pentagram which is upside down, but rather the magician himself, as in this orientation, the counterclockwise circumambulations would also appear to be clockwise from the magician's perspective. As for how these pentagrams are to be drawn, this is simple based on the evidence that we have acquired so far. The point attributions are the same as a regular pentagram, as if rotated 180 degrees, with earth in the top right, air in the bottom right, water in the bottom left, and fire in the top left. Having dealt with the peripheral components for the ritual, we can now proceed to describe the Liber Vel Reguli. As usual, the ceremony begins by cleansing and dressing, following which we proceed to the ritual space to center our energies and banish. At this point, the magician turns to face Boleskine House and performs the 11-fold seal as described in that chapter. Following this, we move on to the ritual proper. Still facing Boleskine, advance to the circumference of the circle. Turn towards the left and complete one revolution of the circle counterclockwise. Give the sign of the Emperor as you pass the Boleskine point. Continue until coming to the north. Stop and turn to face the north. Trace the averse invoking air pentagram and call upon Nuit. Make the sign of chastity. Turn again to the left and pursue the path as before, giving again the sign of the Emperor while passing the Boleskine point. Stop in the south and face outward. Trace the averse invoking fire pentagram and cry Hadit. Give the sign of Horus and Mintu. Walk the circuit again, projecting at Boleskine while passing, this time stopping in the east. Make the averse invoking earth pentagram and cry Therion, giving the sign of Pan or Bacchus. Proceeding as before around the circle, projecting at Boleskine, come now to the west and make the averse invoking water pentagram calling upon Babylon. Give then the sign of Babylon. Then trace a centripetal spiral counterclockwise, enriched by revolutions upon your axis, until you come to the center of the circle. There, stop and face Boleskine. Trace the mark of the beast and cry, I was. Trace the invoking hexagram of the beast, striking the earth with the wand. Give the sign of Mater Triumphans and utter the word Thelema. Make the attitude of Ptah and say, before me the powers of La, behind me the powers of El, on my right hand the powers of La, on my left hand the powers of El, above me the powers of Shit, Beneath me the powers of shit. Within me the powers. About me flames my father's face, the star of force and fire. And in the column stands his six-rayed splendor. Close the ritual with a reprise of the 11-fold seal. Before we proceed to the next section of rituals involving the openings of the watchtowers and the proper elemental consecrations for the magical weapons, let us take a moment to review what we have discussed so far and discuss a topic we have introduced briefly, that being considerations for the notation of magical rituals, as the student will likely find such a tool useful in the process of memorizing existing rituals or designing custom rituals. In general, these rituals are written in very dense blocks of text, much like a normal textbook or novel. This style of page layout is, however, not conducive to reading quickly, reading from far away, or for memorizing the text by breaking it down into reasonable sections. However, as you are probably aware, other formats of page layouts exist which use better placement of information and breaks up the density of the writing such that they can be read quickly or at a glance. Things such as resumes, flowcharts, or screenplays. There is also the matter of visual diagrams, which might be incorporated to describe the visible or physical actions taken by the magician during the ritual, which might be easier read as a symbol or diagram than as verbiage, especially if the text is being referenced mid-ceremony during the performance of a ritual that you have only half memorized. To begin by using the example of screenplay format, a general page of screenplay begins with a slug line. The slug line tells us if we are inside or outside, the name of the setting, and if it is day or night. A magical slug line could give the ritual name, location, and any relevant astrological information. Under the slug line, justified left, are short paragraphs describing the visual action of the scene. This part could be used to describe the physical actions to be taken by the magician. Vocal dialogue, including voiceovers, occupies a center column of the screenplay page. In this way, it stands out from the action, making it easy to find at a distance, and would be where you would place any orations, barbarous names, or other vocal components of the ritual. This use of the two columns of visuals and vocals also causes breaks in the page, which make it easier to keep track of your place in the performance. With regards to visual diagrams, some of this has already been shown in the process of describing these circle rituals, which you may have noticed follow a general pattern or template, that being the energetic activation of the magician, followed by the erection of charged sigils in each of the four cardinal directions while going about the circumference of the circle, and finishing with an affirmation of the energy field that has been created. Our first consideration for the visual representation of this would be our orientation. Topographical maps are generally marked north at the top of the page. An analog clock could be read as having south at the top at noon. An astrology chart also has south at the top, with the ascendant being on the left of the page where the sun rises in the east. However, the top of our page will be the orientation of the beginning of the ritual, usually east, but in some cases north, or in the direction of some particular element, planet, or bolescum. It is here that we might place some symbol to represent the energetic activation, such as a cross for the Kabbalistic cross, or a column with 4 dots or sections to indicate a middle pillar ritual. We would then place the image of the sigil to be drawn, such as a pentagram or hexagram, inside the circle in the direction it is to be drawn, along with any names or verbal components. This can be done in multiple layers in the case of rituals such as the Greater Pentagram, which require 2 sigils to be drawn in each quarter. These sigils can of course be coded with additional data, such as how they are to be drawn, by either coding them in elemental colors or by the use of small arrows to indicate the direction of the turn. There should then also be some indication of which direction to move about the circle using arrows or enumeration. The center of the circle, however, raises an interesting observation. Obviously, for our purposes, here would be placed the words pertaining to the affirmation of the energy field that has been created, or the symbolic representation of that energy field, which we will elaborate on in a moment. Here we come to the observation that, with the exception of Liber Reguli and our interpretation of the placement of spirit pentagrams during the Bornless ritual, that none of these rituals actually form anything in the column of the circle. The Lesser Pentagram, for example, affirms the presence of a hexagram in the column. However, we have not drawn this hexagram, only the pentagrams. If we trace our steps around the circle, this has also not created a hexagram, and the invocation of the archangels creates a cross, not a hexagram. It is possible that this hexagram is merely the symbolic result of the erection of the rest of the energy field, that now, standing within the 4 angelic guardians, we are positioned in the center of the throne chariot of God, and therefore in the midst of a star tetrahedron, a shape sometimes called a Merkaba, which is fundamentally the 3-dimensional expression of a hexagram. We now come to our final consideration, the symbolic depiction of the column of the circle. As we have mentioned, generally speaking, the center of the circle is generally occupied by the phantom hexagram. However, if you are working with the 4 terrestrial elements specifically for mundane needs, it may be reasonable to substitute this with a square or a pentagram if incorporating the spirit elements. For planetary hexagram rituals, it may be best to use the shape gon or gram for the number representing the planetary power you are attempting to summon. For combination rituals, possibly for zodiacal powers, one might incorporate multiple shapes with regards to relevant numbers corresponding to the various powers invoked. Which brings us to a suggestion that could also improve the general look of sigils created in the Chaos/Austin Spare school of thought. The typical example of a chaos sigil is basically a bind rune. A statement of intent is written up, letters of the phrase are eliminated by some chosen method, resulting in the most important letters remaining, and being mashed together into a bind rune, which is sometimes decorated with small flourishes or streamlined to make it appear more goetic. After creating such a bind rune, return to the original statement of intent and look at the words used, eliminating anything superfluous. Attempt to use your knowledge of the planetary, zodiacal, and elemental correspondences to translate the words into a series of numbers by means of 777, Sefer Sephiroth, or Gematria. Then, in a combination of gons and grams, erect a star or shape within the circle incorporating these numerical components and place your bind rune in the center. This will greatly add to the occult aesthetic of your sigil. Now that we have a handle on the general form of these circle rituals, we can proceed to discuss the openings of the grades of the elemental watchtowers, which you will instantly notice are simply fragments of the supreme invoking ritual of the pentagram that have been given a little extra pomp to bolster them after their disambiguation from the ritual. The watchtowers could be considered the greater hexagram version of the supreme pentagram ritual, choosing to invoke a select element rather than all four simultaneously, which will become useful later when we discuss the final elemental enchantments for the four magical weapons. We begin, of course, with the Zelator grade opening of the Watchtower of Earth. For this ritual, you will require the consecrated salt from Chapter 9 to be placed on an altar situated in the north. Starting as usual by cleansing and dressing with the Aspergus May and the Per Sanctum Mysterium, proceeding to the ritual space facing east and performing the requisite battery, Kabbalistic cross, lesser banishing ritual pentagram, lesser invoking ritual hexagram. Then, going clockwise around the circle to the north to begin the grade opening. Taking the wand or staff, perform the knocks. 4, 3, 2, 1, and give the sign of Set, saying, "Let us adore the Lord and King of Earth, Adonai Haaretz, Adonai Melech, Ate, Malkut, Vegebura, Vegedula, Leolahim, Amen." Taking the salt from the altar, sprinkle it in the north, and then go about the circle, sprinkling it in the 4 directions until you return to the altar in the north and say, "Let the earth adore Adonai." Cast the form of the hexagram of earth visualized in a green light. Give the passive spirit pentagram, vibrating the names Ahaya, Agla, Nanta, and give the invoking earth pentagram, vibrating the name Adonai Melech, and say, "And Elohim said, Let us make Adam in our image and after our likeness, and let him have dominion over everything which creepeth over the earth. In the name of Adonai Melech, spirits of earth, adore your Creator. Draw the sigil of Taurus and say, in the name of Ariel and the sign of the bull, spirits of earth, adore your Creator. Draw a cross and say, in the names and letters of the great northern quadrangle and by the 3 great secret names, Mor Dial Hektigar, and in the name of Ikzod Hekal, great king of the north, spirits of earth, adore your Creator. Take up the wand or staff again and say, in the name of Adonai Haaretz, I declare that the spirits of earth have been duly invoked. Finish by giving the knocks. 4, 3, 2, 1. Those of you that have been following along may have recognized a pattern of progression in the preceding chapters of this course, and will no doubt have guessed that the next several chapters will be relatively similar as we work our way through the various grade openings of the watchtowers in the Thalimadon fusion tradition. Proceeding now to the second opening in the grade of 2 = 9, the Theoricus for the element of air. Of course, as usual, we start with the standard ritual battery of ritual preparation, banishing pentagram, invoking hexagram. Still facing east, we then give the knocks 3, 3, 3, and adopt the attitude of Shu supporting the sky, and say, "Let us adore the Lord and King of Air, Shaddai Al-Kai, Almighty and Everlasting One. May thy name be multiplied unto the ages. Amen." Give the invoking active spirit pentagram vibrating the names Aya, Agla, and Exarp. Give the invoking air pentagram vibrating the names Yahweh and Shaddai Al-Kai, and say, "And Elohim said, Let us make Adam in our image and after our likeness, and let him have dominion over the fowls of air. In the name of Shaddai Al-Kai, spirits of air, adore your Creator." Draw the sign of Aquarius and say, "In the name of Raphael and the sign of man, spirits of air, adore your Creator." Draw a cross and say, "In the names and letters of the Great Eastern Quadrangle, and by the 3 great secret names, Oro, Iba, Au Zodpi, and in the name Bata-Iva, Great King of the East, spirits of air, adore your Creator. In the name of Shaddai Al-Kai, I declare that the spirits of air have been duly invoked." Close by giving the knocks 3, 3, 3. We should like to close this episode with a discussion of the Thalimadon fusion tradition. In our experience, most people who study the magic and rituals of the Golden Dawn and Thalimic traditions are not officially initiated into either of those groups, and would more aptly be described as chaos magicians. Though not officially a real thing, we have been using Thalimadon fusion as a handle to describe this independent study of the rituals of these 2 closely related lodges. Students who are well versed in the literature of these fraternities will have probably noticed that some of the rituals given in this course have not exactly been by the book, as rituals such as these grade openings may have been altered for solo practitioners or otherwise streamlined in some fashion. Any student wishing to use the rituals given in this course should still be advised to refer to the original materials in books such as Rigardi's Golden Dawn and in the various works of Aleister Crowley, including the Liber Abba and the Equinox, and read the actual rituals as given in the text. The presentation of these rituals in the form of 3D animation has been for the purposes of providing a scaffolding for the energetic visualization to be done during these rituals, and to assist in the memorization of the rituals and understand the logic of the various use combinations.
Why do I care?
Wake up! Majin Buu's eaten everyone we care about! Everyone is gone! Even Bulma! They've become part of Buu! They can't even die! I just thought the least we could do is put our old differences aside, just this once, and really work together!
You two have lived long enough! Here, give it to me! What are you waiting for? Give it now!
You bet!
It's time to die! Come on! You said right here, right?
That's right, Vegeta. And one more thing. Once we join our bodies, we'll be stuck in that form forever.
Imbecile! You tell me now? Don't you think that's important information? Alright, it's on!
Great! Thanks, Vegeta. All right!
As previously mentioned, the next several episodes may seem rather repetitive as we continue down the path of the grade openings for the watchtowers in the Thelema Dawn tradition. These 5 rituals are extremely similar, changing only the words, god names, and pentagrams and other elemental variables. They otherwise all follow the exact same format. However, for the sake of completeness, we persevere, proceeding now to the Practicus opening in 3-8 for the Watchtower of the West for the element of water. For this ritual, you will require holy water in the magical cup as discussed in Chapter 9 on an altar situated in the west. Beginning, of course, with the standard preparatory ritual battery, we go about the circle to the west. Beginning with the Nox 1-3-1-3. We adopt the sign of Aramuth and say, "Let us adore the Lord and King of Water, Elohim Tsabaoth, Elohim of Hosts. Glory be to the Ruach Elohim, which moved upon the face of the waters. Amen." We then give the invoking passive spirit pentagram, vibrating the names Aya, Agla, Hekoma, and give the invoking water pentagram, vibrating the names El, Elohim Tsabaoth. And Elohim said, Let us make Adam in our image and after our likeness, and let him have dominion over the fish of the sea, in the name of Elohim Tsabaoth. Spirits of water, adore your Creator. Give the sign of Scorpio, and say, In the name of Gabriel, and the sign of the serpent, spirits of water, adore your Creator. Draw a cross, and say, In the names and letters of the great Western Quadrangle, and by the three great secret names, Meph-Arsel Gael, and in the name of Ra-Giosel, great king of the West, spirits of water, adore your Creator. In the name of Elohim Tsabaoth, I declare that the spirits of water have been duly invoked. Close by giving the knock 1-3-1-3. Moving on from the previous chapter in our continued exploration of the Watchtower openings, we now proceed to the opening in 4-7 of the Grade of Philosophers for the Elemental Watchtower of Fire in the south. Again, and of course, we start by giving the standard battery of cleansing, banishing, and invoking, and then going around the circle to face south. We perform the knocks 3-1-3 and adopt the attitude of Thum Ayeth Neith, saying, Let us adore the Lord and King of Fire, Tetragrammaton Sabaoth. Blessed be thou, leader of armies, is thy name. Amen. We give the invoking active spirit pentagram, vibrating the names Ahaya, Agla, Bitom, and the invoking pentagram of fire, vibrating the names Elohim, Yahweh, Tsabaoth. We then give the sign of Leo, saying, In the name of Michael and the sign of the lion, spirits of fire, adore your Creator. Draw a cross and say, In the names and letters of the great Southern Quadrangle, and by the three great secret names, Oip Tia Pdoke, and in the name Edelperna, Great King of the South, spirits of fire adore your creator. In the name of Yahweh Tsabaoth, I declare that the spirits of fire have been duly invoked. Give the knock. 3, 1, 3. Hello and welcome back to the Ritual Specialist, where tonight we will depart momentarily from our exploration of the elemental watchtowers to discuss the magical origins of furries. It should come as no surprise to anyone involved in occult magic or esoteric studies that the original furries were tribal shaman who wore animal pelts or masks for various tribal ceremonies. However, these priests might be called on to play different characters at different times of the year or for different occasions, and as such weren't true furries in the sense that they hadn't fully adopted specific individual personas. This religious furry fandom would, however, grow to influence the normal citizen of tribal life by receiving animal names or totems for strength, meditation, and inspiration from these tribal priests, and this is the origin of the true fursona. This would continue for tens of thousands of years as humans migrated across the planet, and the evidence of animal totems, fetishes, and masks is prevalent in just about every culture in the world. However, in the modern day, it is most commonly recognizable in the mythology of the various native nations of the Americas, where the various animals that comprise the godly personas of those traditions have very distinct symbolism and personalities. These personas are often still given to adherents of these traditions and some cultural appropriators in the form of spirit animals. Spirit animals, however, are not furries in the crystalline sense of being strictly an anthropomorphized animal, as a spirit animal retains a fluid nature, sometimes a human being, sometimes an animal, sometimes an anthropomorph, and sometimes the experience is that of talking to the spirit animal as if it is an entity external to one's self. The crystallization of the anthropomorph would not come until the 12th century, when the French, who had begun looking for new things to sexualize, created the character of Reynard the Fox, which may possibly be the first true fursona that would inspire at least 100 years of French furry fanfics. During this time, however, in medieval Europe, there are many records of people being put on trial for being werewolves, and this is very reminiscent of the earlier tribal and shamanistic magic. As we all know, a key aspect of the mythology of the werewolf is its transformative power. Again, being sometimes a human with the wolf consciousness, sometimes a wolf, sometimes an anthropomorph. And these transformations, if purposeful, are often done using pelts. Yet there is an additional form as well, which is often described in the records of these trials, and bears some resemblance to the phenomena of sleep paralysis and somnambulism, and that is that of an astrally projected wolf, which usually emerges from the chest of the sleeper as an energy form that goes forth by night to perform typically mischievous nocturnal missions. These instances may not be premeditated or malicious, however, as these projection-type transformations are often described as involuntary. 825 years after Reynard the Fox in 1973, Disney would repackage Reynard as an animated version of the story of Robin Hood, which would become the standard aesthetic style for most fursonas from that point, but this is not the end of the evolution. In 1983, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles would go from being an underground independent comic book to the most massive media franchise ever almost overnight. This caused an explosion of mainstream and independent comics and animation studios creating anthropomorphic animal characters in an attempt to recreate the success of Eastman and Laird. This furry comic boom included every possible genre, not just action, but drama, romance, and yes, even pornography. The final form of furries would occur in 1991 with Sonic the Hedgehog, which would create a splinter aesthetic in the artistic depiction of fursonas, as many would come to adopt a Sonic style. And the sexualization was ultimately finalized in games such as Sonic Adventure 2 in 2001 and Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, where it was depicted canonically that Mobians can have sex with humans. And at last we come to the portal opening in the Portal Grades, the final watchtower. We begin, of course, as usual, with the ordinary standard battery of opening spells: cleansing, dressing, lesser banishing, lesser invoking. We then proceed with the knock. 1, 4, and say, Parokith, the veil of the sanctuary, giving the sign of rending the veil, the invoking spirit active pentagram vibrating the name Aya, the sign of closing the veil, the invoking pentagram of spirit passive vibrating the name Agla, and say, in the number 21, and the grand word Aya, in the name of Yah Shiva, and the password of Inri. O spirits of the tablet of spirit, ye I invoke, giving the sign of Osiris slain, Isis mourning, Apophis and Typhon, Osiris risen and saying, Fiat Lux. In the name of Yahweh Aloha Vedot, I declare that the spirits of spirit have been duly invoked. Close, giving the knock. 1, 4.